Welcome to Tech in a Car. This is the new Honda Civic Type R FL5 generation, the newest model of one of the most amazing hot hatches. And in this video, I'm going to show you all around this car and show you some of the cool features that I love about it that you can show your friends if you ever get one of these. But first, let's talk some history. The Honda Civic Type R started in 1997 with the EK9 generation. And then most recently, we've had the FK8 generation, which I've got a video on my channel, so do check that out. And I absolutely love the FK8 version. Although I wasn't a huge fan of its outrageous styling, which this has fixed, the way it handled, the way it was driven was just unbelievable. And I loved it. And in fact, I loved the handling on that car more than my own RS3 that I had at the time. So how does this compare to my current RS3? Well, I'll tell you if you keep watching a bit later. But this car builds on all of those things which have come from the previous generations to make a much better car with better technology, better looks, and it still has a wing as well. Well, a better place to start when talking about this car than these wheels. The wheels on the Honda Civic Type R have actually got smaller for 2023 and newer models. They've gone down to 19 from 20. Now, on the previous generation Civic Type R, I was amazed with how the 20-inch wheels were able to handle all the bumps, and it was just so smooth. It was some of the most impressive suspension that I've had on a car that I've driven, especially a sports car with massive wheels. Well, they've dropped down on this newest version. They are Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires, 19 inches, and they are wider. And the car itself is actually 88 millimeters wider at the front and 8 millimeters lower than the standard Honda Civic. And this car also weighs less than the new generation Civic because this is not a hybrid. The new model has batteries. It's a fantastic bit of technology and perhaps the best all-round car that you can get. So do check out my video on that. But 19-inch wheels, nice big Brembo brakes, all black, apart from the Honda logo, which is red with black bolts as well, which is different from the previous generation of the Civic Type R. One of the key stats on the new Civic Type R: 329 horsepower, 420 newton meters of torque, 0 to 60 in 5.4 seconds, 6-speed manual transmission, front wheel drive with a limited slip differential at the front to help with handling. This car is the most powerful production Honda engine right now made in a car, and it looks the part as well, starting at £49,000 in the UK. The good news is there isn't many options, simply one option, which is a storage pack for the car. Other than that, that is the price you will pay. And yes, it has gone up since it was launched last summer. Just like all cars, prices are going up. Let's talk about the chassis and the design a bit more. So you can see on this new version of the Civic Type R, there are things which are still present. For example, we've still got that fantastic vent behind the front wheels. I love that. We've still got a really cool little flick down here with the bodywork. That's really cool. And we've, of course, got this fantastic wing, which is smaller than the previous generation's wing, but still a very big, obvious wing on the back. So slightly more sophisticated than the previous version, but it's still there, and it still makes it look a bit like it should have been built by Elon Musk and SpaceX and not by a Honda. Well, of course, we've got flared wheel arches at the front and the back. And I did mention this car is lower and wider than the standard Civic, which means that it is obviously more sporty in design with that performance in mind. Now, other things that have been changed, we've got a composite tailgate, just like the standard Civic, and an aluminium front bonnet. So there are other weight savings to be had. And in fact, this car is, as I mentioned, lighter than the standard Civic because it's not a hybrid, which is very interesting to see. And there are actually only two versions of the Civic available in the UK, the Civic Type R and the standard hybrid version. So very easy in the UK to choose your Civic. Hybrid, which actually uses regen, doesn't actually drive an engine to the wheel. So that's very interesting. Or this. So of course there are mechanical changes to the engine in here. There's less blades in the turbo to make it more responsive. And we've got a straighter exhaust system, which again adds to the extra power. This obviously has a really nice design here. Slightly unlikely design, not a traditional engine cover which covers the whole engine. It seems to be designed to accentuate the sportiness of this car. It's got a big Type R on it. In fact, there are a lot of R's on this car to remind you that this is your Civic Type R and no one else's. While we're at the front of the Civic Type R, you can see some interesting designs. Type R logo there, let's not miss that. We've got our new design LED lights, which look great. And we've got a massive honeycomb vent down at the bottom. This is a change from the previous generation, which lets all that air in. No fog lights though on the Civic Type R, because this takes up all the space where they would go, unlike on a traditional Civic. And we have this real vent, which I've already shown you, which brings air into the engine. This is a special Honda because it's got a red Honda badge. That's only saved for their most special cars. You won't see a red Honda badge on your normal Civic or your Honda Jazz. Now, one thing you definitely can't do is accuse the Civic Type R of winging it. This car has a massive wing. It's smaller than the previous generation and actually looks more like a Porsche wing. The way it's attached to the side of the hatch here is much, much more of a traditional sports car design rather than the interesting design of the previous generation. But it's a very, very nice wing, great for putting your food on if you're having a takeaway on a nice day, or you need somewhere to hold your camera in between shots. And then down here, we've got this triple exhaust. Now, this is different from the previous generation. The previous generation had two big ones on the outside and a smaller one on the inside. They've swapped it around. The big exhaust is on the middle and the other two are smaller, but these are real exhausts and they work with the diffuser and the wing to give this car really good grip and downforce when you're driving in fast corners. In fact, the previous Civic Type R had vortex generators on the top to try and clean up the air around the wing. Now, this doesn't have it because the design is a lot more simpler and more aerodynamic, but the principles remain the same. The wing is creating downforce and working with the diffuser to give you that really sporty, cool looking designed car. And just in case, one other thing you might not realize here, although we have two separate lights on each side, there is a brake light in the middle which lights up. And when you're driving the car on the infotainment system, on the driver's display, you can actually see all the lights turning on and off every time you press the brake or don't press the brake. Having a wing does not mean there's no space in the back of your Honda Civic Type R. You have the best of a sports car and the convenience of a hatchback. There's 410 litres in the back of this car. There's a lot of space. We've got this really interestingly designed sideways cover as well, which is a bit quirky, which you can use to cover up the view so nobody can see inside. But there is a lot of space here. There's tether points, there's hooks. You will not be lacking for space in your sports car when you go to the track. That much is for sure. Manual, of course, to bring it down. It is a sports car. Let's not go over the top here. In the back of this car, I am surprised by the amount of space. If I'm being totally honest, this is my seating position. I've got a lot of space. I'm 178. I've got a lot of headroom space. These seats have got the Type R logo on them, look amazing, with a kind of brushed metallic kind of design. The previous generation bucket seats though had a fake carbon design though. So we've kind of lost that. They've got a bit more simple on the back here, even though they're definitely not any less bucket-like in the front when I get in there in a minute. There are no USBs or charging ports down here. That's a shame, but lots of space, lots of visibility back here. And we've got two cup holders in the middle, no center seat and no pass-through either. But again, this is a sporty car. If you want the more comfortable, gentle Civic, then don't get the Type R. The Civic Type R on the inside is just as quirky as the outside. So first of all, let's start with the number of R's in this car. There are a lot of R's in the Type R. There's R's on the seats, on these bucket seats, which I'll talk about in a second. There's R's on the digital driver display, and there's an R on this beautiful plaque right here, which is individually numbered for your model. This is 01122, so not exactly at the start of the line. Maybe one day I'll find a Civic Type R which is. In the middle of the car here, we have this beautiful manual transmission. This is a 6-speed manual with this beautiful metallic aluminium finish, which has an amazing feel and travel. In fact, it's only 40 millimeters travel between each different gear, which means it is outstanding. And it's the same as the previous generation Civic Type R. And I have to say, whilst I'm not a fan of manual transmissions in general, in the Civic Type R, I love it. It's the perfect location, short throw, easy to change. It's amazing. You just have to get used to using the clutch when you're used to having an automatic car. Talking about these seats, they are very aggressive bucket seats. Now, I don't actually like these bucket seats. They look fantastic and they're very, very figure hugging. So they fit great when driving. But for me, they're a bit uncomfortable getting in and out of the car. And I wouldn't personally want to buy a car with these seats in them because of that. Nothing a cushion can't fix, but I guess I'm just too old for these bucket seats. And then other little fun things going on here. We have the traditional Honda wireless charging with a little button down here that you can press to turn it on and off and see if your car is charging. I don't know about you, but it really annoys me when I put my phone in a wireless charger, and the only way to know if it's charging is to look in the corner of the phone, which isn't either safe or easy. The infotainment on this new Civic has been updated just like the new generation. And so for the FL5, we've got a 9-inch infotainment screen in the middle and a 10.2-inch digital driver's display. And the cool thing about the digital driver's display is it's got shift lights at the top, which will change when you're driving and you're meant to change gear. What makes a special car designed for the track? Well, you need an app to track your driving on the track and in general. So we've got the Honda Log R app on the infotainment system, which gives you points for your acceleration, for your braking, for your cornering, automatically scores you. You also have your G meter, and then you also have your various bits of information like air temperature for the intakes, boost pressure, oil temperature, and water temperature, which also shows when you're in the R+ mode in the infotainment system. And then when you go into R mode, it goes really red in the middle here, goes from blue to red, and you know what mode you're in. There's no question about that. Down here next to the shifter, we've got the R mode button, so you can go straight into the most aggressive setting. But underneath that, we have our drive mode button, which lets you change between comfort, between sport, and between your individual mode. And by the way, individual is great in this car. I find the suspension a bit hard on this car, which we'll talk about when I'm driving. Being able to have everything else in sport or R mode except the suspension is fantastic. So thank you for putting in individual mode. This is the first Honda with one of those as well. In terms of normal connectivity, we've got two USB Type A's here. So I've got my adapter to USB Type C here because all of my phones are now USB Type C. We've got our 12-volt charger there. We've got two cup holders here. Talking about the build in here, and I think this is really important. This has a beautiful Alcantara steering wheel with red stitching. It feels great in the hand, and it goes together with the red Alcantara on the bucket seats, with the black Alcantara on the door panels and in the back. And of course, we've got our red carpets for a really sporty feel. So materials wise, it's really, really nice here, and much better than the equivalent RS3 in the UK, which has a really bland interior. This car comes with a really, really nice modern interior with actual buttons to adjust and knobs to adjust the temperature controls as well. So let's look a bit more at the digital dials. So I'm in the R mode now, and you'll notice at the end of the rev counter here, we've got the same honeycomb design which features on the front bumper lower section, and also on this beautifully clever system for covering up the air vents in this car. They're behind this area here. This is not unique to the Civic Type R, but it's great that it's continued those design features and that attention to detail through to the rev counter on here. Really, really good. And of course, we've got a big red engine start button, which pulses at you right now as I'm sitting here. The new Honda Civic Type R, the FL5 version, has a lot in common with the previous version. Well, the first thing you have to notice is the transmission. We've obviously got a 6-speed manual transmission, and this is front-wheel drive only, which means that all the drive comes from the front and you're changing gears. Now, this gear shifter is a magnificent feat of engineering. At 40 millimeters gear to gear, this is a fantastic gearbox, which is comparable with the better Porsche makes on their manual side. So it's a fantastic transmission to have. Now, if we're going to compare, honestly, the cars, you have to say, well, is that a good thing or a bad thing? For pure enjoyment of driving, if you're in a place where you're able to change gears in a sporty way, like a great road, then it's fantastic. But if you're in a town like I am now, changing gears is just a bit of a pain in the neck. The benefits of manual are great for a sporty road, but not so great for driving around town. Not as good for economy either, because you're changing gears when you feel like it, and that may not be the most economical time. Ride-wise, you can see this car is a lot firmer in ride. A firmer suspension is a more sporty suspension, and to be fair, there are 3 modes. There is a comfort, sport, and R mode, and we also got individual. And the truth is, in that mode, the suspension can be soft and the rest of the car can be sporty, which is fantastic. In terms of handling, it's very precise, very good. So let's just rev the engine up a bit here and see what happens. You can get the nice noise. Changing up a gear, down a gear. It's very responsive in R mode. I love the rev counter, the way it changes to give you a much more sporty look. It's a lot of fun to drive. The steering wheel feels great as well. In terms of the interior technology, it's improved a lot in this car. I actually really like the new digital driver's display. It shows a lot of information, and although it's not maybe as customizable as other companies, the information that it shows make it seem like it is, because it's got a lot of choice and a lot of variety. I particularly love the driver assist settings on here, which not only show the car, and when you hit the brake light pops up on the little image of the car, but also I love the fact that it shows where the road is going. So if the road is curving to the left or to the right, the graphic of the road is also curving to left or right, and it's not getting this from the map. This is coming from the sensors, from the camera in the ADAS system, which is really, really clever, which means that the car is always relative to the position on the road when the road is turning left or right, which you don't get on other cars. They show a straight road, whether the road is straight or not. And then it also shows lorries and cars and everything around it, just like a Tesla. So they've definitely upgraded the adaptive systems on this car. So what do I think of this, the FL5 Honda Civic Type R? Well, it's great to look at. It's got all the best of the design flourishes and cues from the previous generation, but much more grown up, much more sophisticated, still an eye catcher, better performance, much better technology inside. In terms of handling, it feels pretty much the same to me. It's got that amazing manual gearbox, which may well be the best gearbox you can get in a manual car. I know some people will argue with me, but to be honest, I've driven a GT3 and I've driven a 718 GT4, and I can tell you that I think the gearbox on this actually feels as good, if not better. And I would say this is a much more comfortable car as well to drive. But what's my tech in the car score? Well, for comfort, I give it a 3 out of 5. It's a sports car. It's got quite a hard suspension, so it's not going to get a lot of points for comfort. For technology, I'll give it a 4 out of 5. It's got a load of technology. For parking, 4 out of 5. Again, it doesn't have a 360 camera. It can't park itself, but it's got a really nice wide angle rear camera. In terms of value at £49,000, this is not as inexpensive as the previous generation, but I think overall, for bang for the buck, for your overall package of performance, technology, and drivability, this is a fantastic, fantastic car. You should definitely check one out. And keep an eye out for my video on the RS3 versus the FL5 Honda Civic Type R, and check out my other videos on the channel on the previous generation as well. And please give this video a like and subscribe for more on the channel. Thank you very much.